To this report back and highlight session. You are going to hear a distillation of the week's events and discussions. For me, Iman Repeti, it's been an opportunity to catch up on the panels and the presentations that I have missed. And I really want to say a sincere thank you to all those who are doing such a sterling job putting all the information together so that we can present to you this high-level distillation of what has been going on through all of these various panels. So I invite you to settle in and listen. If there are presenters that are not included in the lineup, you're more than welcome to raise your hand at the end. So first up, to reflect on the Continental Business Network virtual breakfast, which I had the pleasure of moderating, as well as mobilizing investments for PIDA water projects, is Shamiso Kumbirai, who is an SDG investment officer. Shamiso, it is over to you.
Thanks, Iman, and a good afternoon to all participants online. Looking at the PIDA water session, the main objective of the session was really to begin to share some strategies and experiences for the mobilization of resources to help transform the investment outlook for transboundary PIDA water projects. So we had Director Amina Doom from Outer Nepad, who opened the session, and he highlighted the significant progress that was made in the number of water projects submitted for implementation under PIDA. We've seen a marked improvement from just 2% of all PIDA PAP1 projects submitted, being from the water sector, to about 17% or 41 of the 242 PIDA PAP2 projects coming from the water sector. Our next speaker was Dr. Tuwela Nyirenda Jere, also from Outer Nepad, who shared an overview with regards to the PIDA water program that was launched in collaboration with Global Water Partnership Africa in 2017. The PIDA water program was developed to address the low capacity for project preparation, inadequate financing, and the lack of clear institutional arrangements for implementing the PIDA PAP water projects. Following that, we then had transboundary water specialist, Dr. Laureen Castillo, share a presentation on the PIDA water resource mobilization strategy. This strategy has been developed to help promote the financing of PIDA PAP2 priority water projects to potential public and private sector financiers, and to begin to broker some strategic linkages between project owners and suitable financiers. Our next speaker was Mr. Graham Chingambu from the DBSA, who shared a bit on accelerating private sector investments in water infrastructure. He highlighted various opportunities that exist to attract private sector investors through innovative financing mechanisms that leverage development financing to help de-risk these water projects. Key to this was the need to structure a portfolio of bankable projects that help to promote more efficient use of water resources, climate resilience, cross-border infrastructure, as well as technology. Lastly, we had Mr. Lenka Tamai from Erosicom, who presented a case study on the Lesotho-Botswana water transfer project that's being implemented within the Orange-Senqu River Basin that's shared by Botswana, Lesotho, Namibia, and South Africa. The project is being considered for the PIDA PAP2 and is nearing the completion of the pre-feasibility phase. Currently, it's managed to raise about 5 million euros to date. So Mr. Tamai spoke to some of the fundraising strategies employed through the mobilization of resources, as well as technical support from various partners, such as state parties, development banks, as well as other development agencies. So the three key recommendations that arose from this session are that funding from the private sector really needs to be targeted towards PIDA water projects. The second being that climate resilience should be built into all PIDA water projects to help attract additional investment. And the third being that the PIDA water resource mobilization strategy that has been developed be key in terms of mobilizing and attracting financing for the PIDA water projects. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. That's great. And I think it's important, just listening to all of the discussions and the minister earlier as well, we cannot overstress the importance of water in making sure that we can deliver all of our projects. So that's Shamisa Kumbirai. Thank you very much. Titch, I mean, I called you Tichakunda yesterday because I actually like the lilt of your name. But Titch Simbini is up next to talk on 3 themes or 3 panels. The Africa Single Electricity Market, looking at the evolution and progress of AFSEM and CMP. He is an energy and infrastructure expert. I think you're just looking at that section, Titch, so go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and thank you for the excellent job you're doing in moderating the various sessions. So yes, so our session was divided into 2 parts. The first part discussed the progress that's been made on the Africa Single Electricity Market. And then the second part discussed the progress also and plans for the next phase of the Continental Transmission Master Plan. But I think, you know, it's, of course, we discussed a lot of things. I would like to share a video which sums up the objectives of the 2 initiatives, that is the Africa Single Electricity Market, as well as the Continental Transmission Master Plan. And then I'll conclude after that. It's a very short video, just about 3 minutes. So just bear with me whilst I share my screen.
Almost half of the African population have no access to electricity, with only 41% able to utilize reliable electricity connections. This is a great threat toward achieving the universal energy access target by 2030. Harmonizing electricity markets in Africa is one of the solutions to address the problem, and is therefore a major priority for both the African Union and the European Union. To face the energy challenges in the continent, African heads of state adopted a strategy and action plan on harmonization of regulatory framework for the electricity market in Africa. With the support of the European Union through the Technical Assistance Facility for Sustainable Energy, the African Union is coordinating the harmonization of African electricity markets with the strategic objective to improve Africans' access to reliable energy, promote industrialization, economic development, job creation, and create a more favorable setting for investment. The goal is ambitious. The single African electricity market will be the largest in the world, consisting of the African Union's 55 member states and its regional organizations and institutions, covering a population of more than 1.3 billion. Integrating generation, transmission, and distribution master plans will allow for the diversification of energy sources, supporting energy transition, better trade and exchanges, and closing energy infrastructure gaps between regions and among countries. How do we tackle this complex environment? It is a long process. Through the harmonization of policies, regulatory frameworks, and technical standards, and a continental power master plan. This will ensure that generation infrastructure and transmission networks of the African countries are optimized and connected in the most cost-effective way, a key building block for the single African electricity market. The EU-AU Partnership for Energy brings together continental, regional, and national stakeholders to address energy poverty and support the clean energy transition, ensure energy security, and co-create sustainable energy solutions. Resources will be channeled to regions facing electricity deficits, energy trade will be improved, and new infrastructure for the use of untapped resources will be planned. With new Africa-wide regulations and guidelines in energy efficiency, Africa's communities and businesses will have better access to reliable power, while reducing energy waste and promoting energy-saving practices. Better connections, better energy, better life.
So yeah, so that video sums up the content of the discussions that took place through the presentations that were made by the AUC, the EU TAF team, as well as the AUDA. So it may sound like it's quite an ambitious and impossible task, but one of the highlights that came out is that by 2022 we will be when the lines from Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, and Zambia come online, we will for the first time be able to trade power between two power pools, that is the Southern African power pool and the East African power pool. And this will create probably the biggest electricity market on the continent, stretching from Cape to Cairo. So this is within reach. But of course, during the meeting, we shared the long-term plans of developing the harmonized electricity market, and the timelines that we have has been broken down into 3 phases, which is from now until 2040. And also the immediate work that will start starting this year, we will do the energy planning and modeling together with our partners. So I think in summary, we would like to invite you all on this exciting journey as we embark on this ambitious program to establish a single Africa electricity market. And so that concludes our presentation. Thank you, and all the best with the rest of the deliberations.
Thank you so much, Titch, and thanks for your gracious compliment there. Let's move now to feedback from 2 panels. This is around the Luxembourg Rail Protocol, a new rail rolling stock financing tool, as a mouthful there, and the PIDA quality label linking PPFs to projects. And to present on this one is a lead infrastructure expert, Soteri Gatera. Welcome to you, Soteri, and you have the floor. Soteri, are you there? We can see you only fleetingly, and you have to tilt your monitor because we can only see a little bit of you. There you go. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Iman. Let me add my voice to my colleague who have congratulated you on the way you have been moderating the PIDA week session since Monday up to the moment. Ladies and gentlemen, session 4 of the Luxembourg Rail Protocol as a new tool for financing African railway rolling stock was attended by around 50 participants, and it was moderated by Robert Risinge of ECA. Opening remarks were made by Robert Risinge himself, as well as Mesera Napo. Mesera Napo is the CEO of the South African-based Road and the Rail Associations. And again, presenters were Soteri, myself, Soteri Gatera. I'm the lead infrastructure expert at the UN ECA. And then the other presenter was the Global Railway Working Group Chairman, Mr. Howard Rosen. So presentation was made. The first presentation was made by Soteri Gatera. He highlighted the nexus issues between the African Continental Free Trade Area and the railways. So in summary, my presentation would be summarized to you as follows. The potential benefit of the African Continental Free Trade Area depends on inter area an effective rail system that facilitate environmentally sustainable transport services within Africa and supporting intra-African trade. The Luxembourg Rail Protocol to the Cape Town Convention create a new global legal regime for securing creditors with minimum costs, facilitating more and cheaper asset-based private financing of railway equipment without state guarantee. I repeat, without state guarantee. The protocol brings many general benefits. and in particular, allows government and operators to finance existing and new rolling stock at attractive rates without being a burden on the state resources. But it also delivers three major hidden benefits for Africa. First of the benefit is the global unique and permanent identification system for rolling stock introduced by the protocol will be an important component in developing and attracting private finance for the African Integrated High-Speed Railway Network project and the other cross-border rail networks, as well as supporting real tracking of location and status of locomotive and wagons, interoperability, common equipment operating, and safety standard, and regional and continental regulations. The second advantage is that the application of a common system around Africa encourage more private sector investment, cross-border services, and regional collaboration and integration and entrant of new operators. Lastly, the operating reason, which is underwritten by the protocol, create an economic dynamics for standardization of rail equipment, reducing unit costs and opens up new cost-effective, innovative, flexible, transparent business models and opportunities for government and operators. So after a few minutes, about 20 to 15 minutes discussions, the audience came up with the following recommendation. The main recommendation is that with the new decade, new realities, new priorities, it is time for Africa to move forward with the Luxembourg Rail Protocol and make this tremendous financing tool a reality in Africa. Again, we agreed on what should actually be part of the communique, but we are not sure that the communique, the PIDA Wiki communique drafters, we are not sure whether they have been able to include this one. The agreed upon communique reads like, African states are encouraged to become party to both the Cape Town Convention and the Luxembourg Rail Protocol at the earliest opportunity. PIDA and REX are asked to coordinate states' declaration to ensure that a uniform security regime will apply across the continent to secure public and private lenders and raisers of railway rolling stock. Member states are expeditiously encouraged to introduce registration to incorporate the Cape Town Convention and the Luxembourg Rail Protocol into their local laws, and then sign and ratify the protocol. So, ladies and gentlemen, in summary, this is what transpired in session 4 on the Luxembourg Rail Protocol, what was discussed, what was put forward as the main recommendation, and also a suggestion for what could be included in the communique. Thank you very much. Back to you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that really high-level distillation there, Satiri. Thank you very much. Let's move to Mr. Vincent Muller, who is going to share with us on 4 different areas, infrastructure and trade in services, as well as 21st century infrastructure in Africa. This is the PIDA quality label and community of practice. The AFCFTA, we've got to find, as the minister was saying earlier, better way to pronounce the acronym, I suppose, to talk about the infrastructure and economic transformation in Africa, and then study on the trade carrying infrastructure gap in the SADC region. So Vincent, it's over to you. You have to just let us hear you, though. I think you've got your mic on mute.
Oh, sorry. Can you get me now?
Yes, loudly and clearly. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to say thank you, Madam Moderator. I also join our colleagues to congratulate you for this task, which is definitely difficult, but I think it is going very well. So just to correct that, the session on the study on SADC gap on infrastructure for AFCTA is ongoing now, and I'm not able to report on that one. So I'll just do two sessions, which is the AFCTA infrastructure and economic transformation, opportunities and challenges. This discussion was held on Monday, and the other session is making the AFCTA work for Africa's development, focusing on infrastructure and trading services. So these are the two, perhaps, sessions I'm going to just summarize quickly. So let me start with session 16, which is making the AFCTA work for Africa's development, focusing on infrastructure and trading services. This particular session was moderated by Trudy. Trudy is the CEO of Tralac. And we had three panel members on this session. Etio from South African Transport Agency and John Stewart also from Tralac. The discussion, I think, bordered a lot on how infrastructure can assist the AFCTA in terms of realizing the potential which goes with the AFCTA single market. And it was noted that the speakers noted the fact that the negotiations on trading services focuses on 5 priority services that include transport, communication, financial services, tourism, and professional services. So these are the 5 key areas, and the outcome of the discussion was really to emphasize the need for negotiations outcomes to form the regulatory frameworks that are needed to regulate trading services. So that was one of the outcome and recommendation. The second recommendation there was the need to create, if we have to create the single large market, we will require, among others, enormous investment in quality infrastructure, just like you have said it. In addition to that, it will make us integrate across the continent. So this includes both physical and digital infrastructure, in addition to the fact that we also need efficient and low-cost transport system, which is perceived to be a prerequisite for African countries to become competitive with the global market. So we have good roads going outside Africa, but I think we also need good roads to reach to all the countries, all the corners of the continent. Another recommendation or outcome which came out is the need to develop and adopt harmonized continental ICT policy, legislation and regulatory framework, which is very important for the digital sector. So trading services is quite new on the continent, but I think it has potential if we regulate it very well. Another outcome was the fact that AFCTA presents a significant opportunity for Africa. Therefore, one important step for Africa is to address the issue of road transport regulatory fragmentation. So we have a lot of fragmentation in the road sector, and the lack of alignment in the regulatory framework creates this fragmentation, which needs to be harmonized. And we identified it, the panel actually identified it as one of the biggest non-tariff barriers, which affects the performance of cross-border transport system in terms of transit time, in terms of volume of trade, and logistics costs. So one of the main regulatory issues that also came out affecting road transport was the fact that there's a lot of regulatory difference across the jurisdictions, which is not aligned in terms of between trading partners, between countries. And we need to harmonize so many things under the transport sector. We are talking about permit systems, vehicle standards, vehicle loads. All these require harmonization, and I think we need to make synergies with other instruments that support such kind of harmonization, such as Move Africa, for instance. The majority of the last outcome on this session was that the majority of African countries have excessive broadband costs above global average across Africa, and this is alluded to the fact that our network costs or broadband costs are very high, and it is difficult to trade in services because it really relies on this ICT infrastructure, which is growing very strong. In order to leverage the continent benefits, and attention is needed on how infrastructure can be regulated again under the ICT portfolio. So these are more or less the outcomes of sessions 16, which is the AFCTA trading services. And I must say that the issue of harmonization and regulations came out very strong. The next one, the last one, was the session on AFCT infrastructure and economic transformation on the continent. So this particular one, of course, we had speakers from various angles. We had speakers from ENCA, Mr. Stephen Karingi. We had speakers from the private sector, Mr. Mark Pearson, Sauma Okonko, Prudence from the AUC, and also Samaile, who is from Afreximbank. So it was a powerful panel, and I think we also had the AUDA opening remarks for this particular session. So many things were discussed on this one also, and just to summarize, just a few points which came out. That the first part is according to the ENCA study, which Stephen Karingi also mentioned, was the fact that the AFCTA will basically expand the domestic market growth by 50 to 70 billion to create productive capacity for goods and commodities and services. Impediments here in energy were also noticed. Infrastructure deficit, which require urgent investment and member states' attention to create that enabling environment, is key for this growth to be realized. I think 70 billion USD is a very good growth if all these issues are resolved. The other part is the fact that the cost of transport, which is very significant also for movement of goods and people, should not be prohibitive to address seamless transport and transit needs to enable surplus goods from surplus goods countries reaching to deficit countries for intra-trade objectives to be realized. And this is one of the outcomes. So the issue here is about prohibitive transport costs, because this is also an example of a trading service. Also, the biggest NTB, which is the non-tariff barrier here, also came out, which is the lack of infrastructure itself and connectivity to reach all the corners of the continent or the countries due to that gap which exists, and the hunger for investment through PIDA instruments to reduce that deficit is actually very, very important. Just to conclude on this, one other key outcome was the issue of production and trade of commodities that needs adequate quality infrastructure to transport goods from one place to another. I've alluded to this, but I think the issue here is the need to have reliable infrastructure networks. Therefore, all Africa needs right now is reliable and efficient road and rail networks. And the emphasis on rail is very important, because I think this is one area which can assist the movement of goods at a larger scale, and the efficient ports and seaports will be very important. Energy for production and ICT connectivity, these are very important factors, including the issue of supplying clean water, came out very strongly. The last point, not really the last one, the second last point here was the issue that what is making AFCT exciting is that momentum is alive. It's an African problem with African solutions, But I think the opportunities are enormous and exist in the AFCTA, which is one of the biggest CFTA in the world, and the market of 1.2 billion people and combined GDP of more than 2.1 trillion is really encouraging, and it calls for private sector to really jump in. Just like most speakers highlighted in this session, what is making us nervous is the dilemma that lack of strategic country-level partnerships, while emphasizing the issue of sovereignty and protective measures that are in place by countries, and the continental solutions are impeded. The AFCTA itself and PIDA are good examples, and plays a significant role to resolve those challenges. And I think a way must be found to open up those strategic country-level partnerships for regional projects such as AFCTA and PIDA to be realized. My last point on this particular session was the fact that the infrastructure deficit of approximately $90 billion requires enormous investment and realization of some of the PIDA instruments, such as 5% AGM strategy to reduce the infrastructure deficit. Most importantly, willingness by the private sector, the public sector to work together to unlock these potential investment opportunities to realize the expansion of intra-African trade is very important. So let me just end here. And these were the two sessions which we deliberated on Tuesday. Thank you so much, Madam Moderator.
Vincent, thank you very much for that. Really appreciate you. We're going to move on to the African high-speed rail now and some feedback on that session. And Eunice Terhitha, I welcome you to take the floor. Eunice, are you with us? I can hear some promising activity. There we go.
Good afternoon, colleague. Good afternoon, Iman.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you. I will speak in French. So if you can activate your interpretation. Thank you. Bon après-midi tout le monde. Je vais présenter la session sur le train à grande vitesse africain, le High Speed Railway. Donc, la session était organisée le premier jour, le 18 janvier 2021. Le titre de la session était le projet de train à grande vitesse, les étapes terminées, les projets pilotes et les prochaines étapes pour le projet. La réunion a été débutée par la présentation par Aouda Nepad sur l'état d'avancement du projet du train à grande vitesse africain, et la définition du cadrage détaillé avec le schéma directeur complet et les défis de la stratégie globale du projet, et ainsi une introduction de la liste des projets retenus et les deux projets pilotes. Ensuite, la commission de l'Union africaine UEC a présenté le contenu la liste des 14 projets pilote et a insisté sur les deux projets accélérés en Afrique centrale et australe. Parmi ce qui a été cité, les vitesses adoptées varient de 120 km à l'heure à 350 km à l'heure. Il a été mentionné ici que le projet comporte les transports des personnes et du fret. Ensuite, l'EAC a présenté l'état du projet pilote accéléré, le link numéro 34, qui relie Kigali en Rwanda à Dar es Salaam en Tanzanie. Et ce projet est combiné avec la liaison ferroviaire Kampala-Bujumbura en région de l'Est. Il a été aussi indiqué que le projet est déjà en phase de construction. Ensuite, courant les discussions, les participants ont insisté sur l'importance de séparer le chemin de fer classique de la technologie à grande vitesse. Ils ont également souligné la nécessité de clarifier le modèle de financement. Et parmi les choses qui sont très importantes durant la réunion, il a été exposé les avantages du protocole du Luxembourg. Si l'État membre adopte ce protocole, ça va aider à l'investissement dans le matériel roulant. Ainsi que, je fais juste un résumé des idées qui ont été exposées. Ainsi, les présentateurs et les participants ont insisté que l'EUC, la Commission de l'Union africaine et ODA-NEPAD mènent une étude distincte sur la définition du réseau ferroviaire transafricain ainsi que sur les normes et les standards visant son interopérabilité. Parmi les recommandations majeures de la réunion, c'est qu'il a été demandé à la Commission de l'Union africaine, ODA-NEPAD et les CER pour accélérer la mise en œuvre du projet, ainsi que d'organiser davantage des événements pour aborder le projet et apprendre de tous les intervenants, ainsi que de l'importance de respecter strictement la vitesse minimale adoptée au niveau international pour qu'une technologie haute vitesse soit crédible auprès des partenaires. Et une dernière recommandation, c'est que les participants ont recommandé à la Commission de l'Union africaine, ODA, NEPAD et la EAC d'organiser un atelier sur l'état de préparation nationale des chemins de fer à grande vitesse pour la région. C'est tout pour ma part, pour cette session. Je vous remercie infiniment.
Thank you very much, Eunice, for that. This is moving so smoothly and so quickly. Thank you very much to everyone so far who's done such an excellent job of just putting these highlights together so efficiently. I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Tawela Nyirenda Jere to talk to us about the Cybersecurity Assessments Report. And I just want to let all of our participants know that if you also have sections and sessions that you need to give some feedback on, you're more than welcome to do so once Dr. Nyirenda Jere has completed hers. Thank you so much, Dr. T. You can go ahead.
Thank you very much, Iman. So I will provide feedback on two sessions, the cybersecurity session and the session on 5IR. So for this cybersecurity assessments report session, this was mostly an information session meant to sensitize participants on the work that AUD and NEPAD has been doing as far as assisting member states with undertaking cybersecurity assessments in line with the provisions of the African Union Convention on Cybersecurity and Personal Data Protection. So it was a very short session in which we presented some key elements of the African Union Convention in terms of some of the provisions that it calls for. And some of these have to do with, for instance, our issues around policy and governance, issues around the legislative and regulatory environment, as well as specific measures that member states are called upon to undertake towards meeting the requirements of the convention. Important to mention that currently, as far as the convention goes, we currently have, I believe it's, I want to make, I believe it is now 15 signatories and 9 ratifications, but I will confirm that as we go. But the important thing to note is that for the convention to come into force, we need 15 ratifications. So we're 2/3 of the way there, and we are looking forward to getting the 6 ratifications for the convention to enter into force. Important to mention, I think that a way for the continent to sort of develop a harmonized approach to dealing with cybercrime and establishing cyber resilience within our member states. With the coming in of the CFTA, we know also that a lot of the trading and a lot of the provision of services will be supported or will happen through online services. And in that instance, it becomes very important that we are able to assure the security of transactions as well as the protections of people's personal data. So the assessment that was undertaken was using a framework that AUD and NEPAD developed based on the convention, and really just checking in terms of where member states were as far as the different measures called for by the convention, with a view to understanding then the kinds of interventions that might be needed at a general level across member states, but then also looking at the specific interventions that would be needed for different member states. So we presented the findings of the assessment for the 10 countries that we assessed. And at the end of the day, really just came out with some conclusions in terms of some of the actions that were needed at a national level and then also needed at a regional and continental level. Important to mention that the reports themselves have not been formally launched. So this was, again, like I said, an information session, and we are looking forward to formally launching the reports and having a more detailed and in-depth discussion with our various stakeholders thereafter. The second session that I would report on is the session that looked at exploring the use of 5IR technologies to catalyze investment opportunities along the North-South corridor. This was also an informational and brainstorming session that was co-organized between AUD and NEPAD and the DBSA, with a view to really beginning to unlock the question of how do we use all these different technologies that are available to us to develop spatial decision support systems that would enable us to target our investments better when we start talking about corridor development. So the idea was to present the concept and get some feedback and some insights in terms of what already exists that is similar to what we're proposing, and how can we learn from those different projects and initiatives that are already out there as we begin to develop this particular concept. So we did get some interesting feedback in terms of some work that is ongoing, for instance, with SACRI, as well as some information from the on the Nile Basin Initiative, where they also have some kind of a spatial decision support system. So coming out of PIDA Week, we will continue then to engage with various stakeholders at a regional level across the different regions, targeting specific corridors and really looking at how can we set up these spatial decision support systems. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nirenda Jere. Really appreciate that delivery as well. Let me just quickly check if we have any questions or comments, and perhaps I'll read this one out from Christian Kingombe from 4IP Group. France isn't the only country straining to make its rail system pay for itself, saying the US has this problem as well, although Amtrak has been losing money for years, and like the SNCF, isn't getting the investment that it needs. There is a question here. What does the AU and NEPAD intend to do to avoid the many reasons for France's vaunted rail system, which has become insolvent and now subsisting on life support from the state? Rail operator SNCF runs an annual deficit of 3 billion euros, despite receiving 14 billion euros in public subsidies annually. Its debt at 45 billion euros equals the national debt of New Zealand. Quite an interesting and sobering take there. And I'm wondering, Eunice maybe can respond on this, although I don't know if you managed to catch the translation, since you were giving some feedback there on the high-speed train. Or anyone really, if there is someone with us now that can maybe respond to Christian, we can do that. Otherwise, I'm going to prepare to welcome any of the other feedback or more feedback on the sessions that were delivered during PIDA week. You can do a show of hands. I mean, you can raise your hand if you want to step forward and give us some feedback. Otherwise, Dr. Nirenda Jere, maybe I'm in your hands about the question that was posed.
So Iman, I think it's a fair question, but I doubt that we would be able to provide an answer immediately. I think that even as we're talking about the high-speed rail and the detailed scoping study that has been done, as well as the pilot projects that have been identified, I think the issue there is that we are looking to see what is the most efficient way of designing our rail systems. And clearly we will have to learn lessons from those that have already gone before us to make sure that we do not repeat the same mistakes.
Thank you so much for that. All right, show of hands. Anyone that would like to come in and would like to share their distillations from the various sessions? Okay, I'm going to give it about a minute or so more in case somebody's having connectivity issues to step forward and just share with us just a summary and a précis of what happened in some of the other sessions. If that doesn't come through, then I'm going to release everyone, at least for a little while, as we prepare to close these events at what has been, I think, a historic moment, what with the launch of the African Continental Free Trade Area, the opportunities and the opportunities it presents and the implications of it. It has been, I think, some of the most interesting discussions that I've been privy to. So unless there's anyone else that wants to step forward, I think we are going to leave it there. We can continue with the other work that is happening as well on during the PIDA week proceedings. So please do that. Dr. T?
I do see a hand raised. Maybe we just check who is asking for the floor.
Okay, I have one. Thanks, Doc, for pointing that out. And let's go to Christine Razanamahandri. You're welcome to take the microphone.
Hello, could you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you, moderator, and thank you, Dr. Tuela, and good afternoon, colleagues. This is Lubaso Christine Razanamahandri. I will report to the CBN breakfast session, which was on Monday, the first day. So the session was started by opening remarks, firstly by His Excellency Dr. Ibrahim Hassan Mayaki, the CEO of the ODA-NEPAD, who highlighted the different points like the reason of why the CBN session was established, and which was focused on the importance of the CBN as the one of critical tools of the implementation of the PIDA. And that's one hand. And the second one is the characteristic that these tools welcome all stakeholders, especially the private sector one, to take part on the implementation of the PIDA projects. And then he was highlighted also the historical context about the PIDA, which was funded through the lack of prioritization in regional projects in Africa, and also as well as the alignment, the lack of alignment with between the prioritized project and the regional integration. And the objective was to transform the African economy. So those 2 points, His Excellency Dr. Ibrahim Asane Mayaki was highlighted, and the last point was about the different PIDA tools. It's focusing on SDM and PIDA, PPF, and other tools linked to the CBN, and which is unique tools, as he said, because this tools is linked to another tools like 5% agenda and ADM, African Infrastructure Investment Guarantee Mechanism. So those the 3 points were highlighted by His Excellency, and then His Excellency Ambassador, Her Excellency Ambassador Mrs. Brigitte Marcussen, the head of the EU delegation to the African Union, as well, opened the remarks focusing on the importance of the infrastructure to build back the Africa economic transformation, which was vulnerable during this global pandemics. And then also she was highlighted the accomplishments of the relationship between the EU and the African countries, including the PIDA, focusing on the 4 major pillars, which are the European Investment Plan, the Africa-Europa Alliance Task Forces, and the European initiatives, and as well as the EU-Africa Business Forum. So, and the third speaker was the CBN chairperson himself. It was Mr. Hubert Danso, which highlighted the importance of having different funding sources, like the pension funding and also the sovereign funds. So that was highlighted by Mr. Hubert Danso. So followed by, after that opening remarks, there was a brief presentation on CBN policies, regulatory and advisory, and focusing on the 5% agenda and also the African Infrastructure Guarantee Mechanism. And is one of the project, as a showcase project, Kinshasa-Brazzaville Road Rail Bridge was presented also as a successful history of CBN project. And the presentation was followed by panel discussion between different stakeholders, which are a representative from the BSA and also representative from the UNICA, and also a young entrepreneur from MSMEs, and as well as different stakeholders, investors who contributed to responding questions related how to make projects attractive by private sectors, and also how to engage those private sectors to convince them that to invest in the infrastructure project to fill the gap of the financing of those infrastructure projects. And the panel discussion was followed by the media session. We received also different questions from media. Some of them are from the Xinhua News and also from the Channel Africa, who expressed really their interest about the PIDA projects, especially in this COVID situation, about its attractiveness, if it's still attractive and it's still has the same level as before COVID-19, and also the thinking of the private sectors against the situation COVID-19, and also the way that their willingness to always to finance the projects. So those are the key. A brief summary about the CBN breakfast session. I think that's all from our side. Thank you.
Excellent job, Christine. Thank you very much for that. I just want to quickly check if there is anyone else perhaps that would like to make some presentation or some submissions on those sessions. I'll give it about 30 seconds or so more. You can indicate by raising your hand, or you can even put a little message in the chat, and we'll make sure that we can get you up. All right. I'm not seeing any raised hands, so I'm going to leave it there. Just remember, I just want to quickly give you the resource for where you can find all of the presentations and the documents that you've seen. I know I've got a habit of just taking a screen grab of the relevant things that I like and then watching them later. But you can go to the Virtual PIDA Information Center, which is the PIDA portal, and it is au-pida.org. Everything that you need will be there. Dr. Tawela, I can see you there. Perhaps you have some final words.
Okay, thank you very much, Iman. So because we may not get the opportunity perhaps to address participants again, since we're now going to be moving to a closing, I think from my side, really, number one is to thank you very much for an excellent job in terms of moderating and facilitating the various sessions throughout the week. It has been our pleasure really working with you on PIDA Week. Also to thank our various partners that worked with us in terms of putting together the various sessions, the programs, and really helping us to shine in terms of some of the material that has been presented, as well as the directions being set for PIDA PAP 2. Special thanks also to participants that have been with us from Monday until today, and really just under very difficult circumstances, I think, for all of us, but gratifying to see that everybody has rallied and we've been able to hold this PIDA week. And then last but not least, obviously to the internal team at AUD and NEPAD, special thanks from myself and the technical team working behind the scenes to facilitate our engagements and our interactions, as well as to the interpreters that have made it possible for us to communicate. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And everyone deserves, I think, a huge congratulations and a virtual round of applause, in the absence of which I'll give you some snaps. Take a break and we'll see everyone, as Dr. T has indicated, for the closing. Take care.